Sechas Nazir Daf Mem Gimel has three sugyas, all pertaining to the halacha of tumas meis, as it's relevant to a nazir and a kohen. We know both a nazir and a kohen are forbidden to become tamei tumas meis. We have three sugyas here. The first is discussing if they become tamei meis twice, once through touching and once through ohel, how they can be over an avera twice for those two things, even though they're tamei for both of them. The next sugya will be tumas meis. Does that chal on a person who is a concise, that is, he's very nearly dead but still has some breath of life? And we'll have a machlokas on that topic, and then we'll get to the topic of, is the kohen or the nazir who are allowed to be metame for a close relative, the kohen's allowed to be metame for a close relative, does that apply if part of the body is removed and is lacking? We'll have a lengthy discussion on that topic. So let's begin. The Gemara has just said that the Isser for a Nazir, specifically we're referring to be Metame, could apply twice. He could violate it once by being Metame Tumas Nigias Meis, by touching the dead corpse, and another time by doing Tumas Ohel, stepping to a room where the body is. And we've said that if one after the other, that can't be, because once a person becomes Tameh, he can't violate any Isser by becoming Tameh again, because he already is Tameh. However, if he comes into both at the same time, then he gets two Isurim. How could you get both at the same time? So the Gemara said, if you step into a room that has a mace, so the halacha is as soon as you enter the room, it's considered to have touched the mace. The Tumah fills the room, and as soon as any part of the body enters the room, there's Tumas Negia. And when the entire person steps into the room, or the majority of the person steps into the room, then it's Tumas Oel. So the Gemara asks right away, those two things can't happen at the same time. Because as soon as often his hand enters the room first, his hand enters the room, he becomes Tumah through Negia, and he doesn't become Tumas Oel until he enters the room with his entire body. So the Gemara says we have to be referring to where he keeps his hands at his side, and he enters the room with his entire body at once. So the Gemara asks, but the tip of his nose is going to come in first. Generally, people lean forward a bit as they walk out. So he's going to have Tumas Negia before the rest of the body enters. So again, it won't be simultaneous. So Gemara says, no, we're talking about where he's leaning his head back or he's standing perfectly straight. But the tip of the nose won't get in first. So Gemara says, still, the toe is going to get in first. Because he's walking, he stretches out a foot, the toe will enter first. So Gemara says, okay, you're right. So it can't be somebody who steps into a room where the mace is. It has to be a different solution. Either you'll say that he's carried into the room in a box that blocks the tumah, and when the cover is taken off, it's taken off all at once, and then he must and Tumas Negias Meis at the same time. Or you say he's in a room where there's a person who's not dead yet, and then the person dies when he's in the room. Then again, the tumah fills the room, and he gets Tumas Negia as well as Tumas Oel in the same exact moment. And that has to be the situation in which you have that. Okay, now the Gemara goes into the second sugya. The sugya of, is he violating the Isser of Negia, of becoming Tameh, and this refers to a Nazir, and a Kohen, if he is in a room with a person who is a Gosei. Now, a Gosei means that he's mostly dead. He is just a slight flicker left. So the Gemara quotes a Brisa. The Brisa has two limudim, which seem to say that a person doesn't violate the Isser of becoming Tameh until the source of Tumah is fully dead. One is from the word Lehechalo. It says Lo Yitama Ba'al Ba'amav Lehechalo, to violate him. So it doesn't violate him until he's Mechulo, until he's fully Chulin, which means that the person is fully dead. And the other one is from the word Bimosam. The Torah says La'aviv L'chos Lo Yitama Lehem Bimosam, specifically referring here to a Kohen Gadol, but it's Bimosam in their death, he can't be Metame to them. That implies that before the full death, he is allowed to be Metame to them, or that is, he is allowed to be in contact with them, and he doesn't become Tameh from them. So what's the difference between these two psukim? And both quoted in a brisa. So Rav Yechon says there's no difference, it's just a question of what the source is. Rav Yechon says there is an afkamina, and that is an afkamina of the Goses. According to the pasuk you learn from Lehechalo until Chulin, that does apply to a Goses. A Goses is already Chulin, because the Goses is going to get to the stage of the death almost first, and therefore by being in a room or by touching the Goses, the person's already Lehechalo. And therefore, if the limud is from Lehechalo, you would be aser for him to touch or be in the room with the Goses. If, however, the limud is from Bimosam, it will be until the breath of life is fully left, and would not apply to the goses. Okay, now the Gemara asks, well, if that's true, there is a machlokes. What is each one going to do with the pasuk of the other one? So the Gemara says, according to the one who says that you're allowed to be, the Kohen's allowed to be in the room with the goses, what do you do with the bimosam, which is only until he died? So my answer is that's for a different drasha that Rebbe says in the Brisa, that it's only bimosam, it's only the death of his relatives or of anyone that he's not allowed to come in contact with, but other tumah sources he is, so he's allowed to touch someone who has taras or is a zav, even though it'll make him tumas taras or tumas zav, that's not a problem. The only problem is tumas mace. Says the Gemara, so according to the one who learns from bimos until there's a death, actually, how does he know this halacha that it doesn't apply to tumas taras or tumas ziva? So the Gemara answers that's because it says bimosam. It should have just said bimos. Bimosam, the extra mem, is to teach me the second halacha. So you can learn two things out of this. And obviously the other Man Yamran doesn't hold it, that's a separate drasha. So now the Gemara says, okay, and according to the one who says you learn from bimosam, that you're allowed, that the Isser only applies when the person is fully dead. What do you do with the heichalo, which seems to imply that the Isser is already when he's just a goses? So the Gemara says that's for different halacha, that's to teach that someone who is mechulol already, that is someone who's tummy already, doesn't violate an Isser by coming in contact with a tumah source. It's only where it makes a person chulin, not where someone's already mechulol. So the Gemara says in the other one, where is he going to learn that halacha? So the Gemara says because it should have just said lehichal. Lehichalo is extra, and you can learn another drasha out of that. Okay, now the Gemara asks a kasha. The Brisa that says a person is not allowed to become, is not mitame, does not become a source of tumah until his soul has left, even if his body is cut up, even if he's a goses, he doesn't spread tumah. That seems to contradict the opinion that says that already when he is a goses, there's an isser of the Kohen coming in contact with him. So it's a kasha on that Man Yamar. So Gemara says, no, it's not a kasha. That Man Yamar will say, even though he doesn't spread tumah yet, the isser on the Kohen still applies, because the isser is not defined as tumah. The isser is defined as lehichalo, and lehichalo already before he's already in the status of the tumah. All right, now the Gemara goes into a whole new sugya, and that's the discussion of where the body is incomplete. Is it mutter for a Kohen Hedyot to be mitame to a close relative? We know that the halacha is that a Kohen Hedyot is allowed to become tameh to any mace, except for one of his six relatives, father, mother, son, daughter, sister, brother, spouse, and a mes mitzvah, that is somebody who doesn't have anybody else to take care of him. Now, Rav Chizda says that if, let's say, his father, who's considered to be his closest relative, let's say his father's missing his head, then he's not allowed to become tummy to the body of his father. The body without the head, even if the head's there, but it's not attached. Why? Because the Torah says, le'aviv, it stresses again to his father, le'imo, le'aviv, le'onav, levitu, le'achiv, to them he's allowed to become tummy, only if the full av is there. But if it's not together, it's not the full av, then that heter of le'aviv, itama, does not apply. So the Gemara asks, so then what would be if his father was walking in a village and he gets jumped by some thieves and they cut off his head? The son is there with him. That means he can't deal with him. He's not allowed to become mitame to him. Who's going to take care of him? The Gemara answers that's different, because there he's a meis mitzvah. There are two heterim. There's a heter of father and there's a heter of meis mitzvah for a kohen to be mitame. If he's walking in the valley and there's no one else around, then he's a meis mitzvah. So Gemara asks, so if he can't be mitame as a father, he certainly can't be mitame as a meis mitzvah. So Gemara says no. Meis mitzvah is different. Meis mitzvah, you don't have that drasha of being an entire body, and therefore, although he can't be mitame as a father, he could be mitame as a meis mitzvah. So we're asking, is he really a meis mitzvah? Meis mitzvah is defined as someone who has no relatives. This guy has a relative. He has a son. So Gemara says, no, meis mitzvah is defined as someone who can't be helped. If the mace were to call out, no one would come. This guy is alone. He's abandoned. He's on a road. There's no one around as far as you can see. And therefore, if he would call out, no one would come besides the son. And you're telling me the son can't come as a son. Therefore, he can only come as a meis mitzvah, and he is a meis mitzvah. And now the Gemara is going to ask from two brises that seem to contradict this halacha of Rav Chizda quoting Rav. The Gemara is going to say that there's actually B'chokas Tanaim. These brises are Rabbi Yehuda, and Rav was the Chacham. So we'll go to the first brisa. Raisa says on the heter of a kohen to be matame to his sister, it says lahi tamah, he can be matame to her. It can only be matame to the body of his sister, not to one of the limbs of the sister. Because there's an issue to be matame to a limb, whether the limb came from a live person or from a dead person. Either way, it's a limb which is now dead, and therefore it's matame. Now, that seems to imply that he can't be matame to the limb, but if he became tame to the body, and then he's going looking for the missing limb, that he's allowed to do. That would mean that he's allowed to be matame to the body, even though the limb is missing, contradicting what Rav said, that he can't be matame, that the heter to be matame to a relative is only if the body is complete and not missing a limb. So the Gemara says it's Yehuda's opinion. Rav disagrees, and Rav holds like the Chachamim. The Gemara is going to quote the Chachamim soon. Now, the Gemara quotes Rabbi Yehuda in his Brisa in full. Rabbi Yehuda, there's a Brisa quotes Rabbi Yehuda, says straight out, it says law can only be matame to the sister, can't be matame to one of the limbs, whether it's from the live or from the dead, because the heter to matame is only to the person, but again implying that it could be matame even if the person's missing a limb. Now, second Brisa the Gemara quotes is brought to Rav Kahana, quoting a Brisa of Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, said a person can be matame to her, again his sister, cannot be matame to one of her limbs, cannot be matame to a kazayas full of flesh, or kazayas of liquid that comes out, or even a kazayas of rotted material. Any of these things he cannot be matame to. Now you may think he can't be matame to the majority of the body, which is defined as the spine, the skull, and the majority of the height, or the majority of the number of bones. And that thing, you would say that that's not enough to be matame to. So for that is a drasha on the extra word v'amarta. The pasuk says, so that extra v'amarta is to say that you could be matame to the majority of the body, and that is if it is just majority of the bones or majority of the height, as long as you have the skull and the spine. So now the Gemara says, now that only says by the sister, how it applies to everyone else. The Gemara says you learn from the sister, just like by the sister the tumah comes from the body, anyone else the tumah comes from the body, you could be matame too as a relative if it's that amount. So there you clearly have that even though you're missing part of the body, you could still be matame to them. And again the Gemara says that contradicts Rav. The Gemara answers it's Rav Yehuda's opinion. Rav is saying like the Chachamim. The Gemara quotes the Brisa here. There is Brisa that says the incident happened when the father of Rabbi Yitzchak Beginzak, when he died, and he was a Kohen, but it was 3 years after he died, so the body wasn't fully there. He came and asked Rav Yeshua ben Elisha and the 4 Zakanim who were with him, and they said, you can only be matame to the father, La'aviv, the Joshua we said before, La'aviv, it has to be whole, and not if there are parts that are missing.